I'm Ebong.
And I'm Kate.
And I'm Sonya.
Today we're dishing with you from Chef Tony's, which is located at 4926 St. Elmo's Avenue in Bethesda.
The heart of Bethesda.
We crossed the border.
When I first came to Chef Tony's, I guess I thought it was all Italian food, but he's actually...
It says seafood.
Right,
like
seafood,
right on
I know.
right on the thing.
But you know what you can get? You can get, he will make amazing pasta, but he can also make you anything else. Because
Chef Tony, we'd like to have some of your amazing pasta.
I had some incredible fish. He's the seafood guru here in town, so I'm sure that's the best
crab cake.
best crab cake you've ever eaten.
And good hummus, which is always good in a pinch, and being healthy in the spring.
See, the hummus thing is only one part. The big part of hummus too is the bread. Or what
Really?
you're using. Yeah, the pita bread is huge.
Okay.
Well, this is like phenomenal. Look how thick that is and fluffy.
No, it is. It looks good.
Right here in
Wafting
Bethesda,
this
right
way.
in the heart of downtown.
And our guest today is Robert Goodwin, who's with Executives Without Borders. Welcome, and could you tell us a little? Is this similar to Doctors Without Borders?
Well, actually, my board chairman lives next to one of the original founders of Doctors Without Borders in France.
I didn't know that.
A guy named Bernard Kouchner, who encouraged us to get started. And if you think about it, a lot of doctors are great healers. For the most part, they're terrible administrators.
True.
And so if you can add a group of people that can help do the business side of things while they go out and do the healing side, everyone wins.
So you actually coordinate with doctors, and do you coordinate with
Well, what industries do you work in? You work in what industry?
So our goal is to find really good nonprofits and then make them better. So we've got programs around healthcare in Honduras. We've got education programs in India. We're doing a lot of work in Haiti right now. So it just kind of depends on the organizations we find, and then much like a consulting firm would, understand what they best need, and then work our contacts within the business community to fill that need so they can improve their operations.
How did you get involved in this? I mean, it seems like somebody up an executive level would be concentrating on their career and working their way up the ladder. How do you think then, let me double back and help people in need?
Sure. Well, I got started. I used to be a captain in the Air Force. I used to do counter-drug operations in Colombia. And a lot of the communities I was in, I saw that the people were extremely vulnerable to the cartel influence. They needed health, they needed basic education, and the reason they were so vulnerable is just because they just couldn't resist. They just weren't strong enough themselves. And so I looked way back when, this is in the late 90s, I said, who's working on that challenge? And so over time I worked at USAID, spent a lot of time in Iraq helping to rebuild the healthcare system, and saw that healthcare is an enabler for everything else happening. If kids are sick, they can't learn. If an employee is sick, they're not going to perform very well at the workplace. So I left and went into the nonprofit world and found that every place on earth I went, there were cell phones. But those same communities didn't have safe water. Mm-hmm. And so rather than building a new infrastructure in order to deliver that safe water, I said, why don't we just leverage the infrastructure that those companies have to get it done? And so that's what our model is built on. The challenge is a lot of these executives that are out there making a profit, they don't quite understand that the skill sets that have made them successful in business directly translate to the nonprofit world. The reason we've had a lot of improvement in the fight against HIV and AIDS around the world isn't because of more doctors and nurses. It's because we figured out the logistics of getting the drugs out to those that need them.
And whereas doctors have taken this oath to help people and understand that their main purpose is going to be to help someone, maybe whether they can pay or not, how do you get someone who's an executive of a company who's working for profit here in the United States to think, wow, I should help development in Haiti?
You have to give them a longer term perspective. And so if I'm a company and I want to ultimately have more contracts, I need to build relationships with those communities. And so it used to be that a company would cut a deal with the government of those countries, and then the government would say, we want you to do some work in the country, but mostly it was in the constituent areas of those government officials, not necessarily where the greatest need was. And so if a company can actually build relationships around healthcare or education, they suddenly, with those groundswell of relationships, can then drive more business development. And that's really where the trend is going, is the companies that have those relationships with the community have the brand and the recognition that allows them to open doors that they otherwise wouldn't have. At the same time, if I'm a company that gives these opportunities to my employees to use your core skills to get involved in these efforts around the world, I'm going to have competitive advantage over companies that don't do that. So I'm going to have greater retention, greater recruiting, and I'm going to be able to compete for top talent. And that's where a lot of companies like IBM, Dow Chemical, and others are kind of saying, like, how do we figure this out? And so we're helping companies like that try to have more effective social responsibility programs. At the same time, there's a lot of companies that are small and medium-sized that don't have the resources of those major multinationals, so we're trying to create a platform to make it easier for those small companies to get involved.
So you've just gotten back from Haiti.
Right.
Tell us about what you're doing there. I mean, this tragedy happened over a year ago. People have kind of stopped talking about it. We hear about it every once in a while, but what is it really like there, and what are you doing to make things better?
So there's still a lot of people in the camps. I think there's a great concern about did our donor money go to what it was supposed to go to? And for the most part, the answer is yes. It went to save lives, it went to stabilize the communities, but there's still a ton of people that are in camps and a ton of people that don't have jobs. And so the thing is, if you're providing meals to people, the next day you have to provide a meal. But if you provide a job to a person, then they can find their own meals. They can find ways to send their kids to school. And so that's what we're doing, is a lot of the organizations that went in for the original relief effort are not the organizations you need to create jobs. So we're working a lot with Haitian multinational companies to create jobs and actually help the environment. So one specific thing is plastic recycling. There's no recycling happening in all of Haiti. And so you can imagine all these plastic bottles that came in for the relief effort, they're just everywhere. And they're clogging the canals, they're clogging, everything. And so we had the recent cholera outbreak. And part of the reason cholera was so bad there is because the water is not able to flow freely through the canals. And so if you have cholera-infected water and heavy rain, suddenly the water spreads to all these different places. Mm-hmm. But all of the stuff in the canals, whether it's plastic bottles or milk jug type containers, it's all recyclable. So we're actually creating community centers to collect that plastic. You can then process it and get paid for that plastic, and it helps the environment, reduces the amount of disease transmission. But the biggest thing, it creates a sustainable job for those Haitians.
Do you only accept executives into your program, or can anybody come in and help?
I would say any professional can come, but what we try to do first is to have what I'd call a senior general manager, someone with 15 plus years of experience that's led a business unit, that's led a cross-functional team, someone that has kind of gravitas to get things done within their community, within their company. Once you have that person, you can leverage the junior professional, the one that has the fire and maybe a little bit more time because they don't have a family, but don't have the experience. And at the same time, there's a ton of retirees that want to get involved, and their networks atrophy after a very short period of time. So if we can find a way to have that senior person that can get things done within the community, you can then leverage the retired professional and the young professional.
Good work.
Yeah. What about the typical person that's just watching the District Dish saying, well, I'm really impressed with what you do, but how can I help either spread the word or anything that you might need? How can just, our normal viewer?
Sure. I would say that so many people in Washington, D.C. Are working for companies, and just their skill and knowledge can be used so effectively. So, for example, right in Haiti, when the earthquake happened, a lot of the organizations were building temporary shelters. And a lot of those shelters require materials that didn't exist in Haiti. So they were suddenly importing all this stuff from around the world. Well, a lot of these organizations have never imported the level of goods that they were having to import, and they didn't know what they were doing. So companies, like DHL, major multinationals that are shipping stuff around the world, it's easier for someone to lend their expertise to get that done. And then over time, you can start with the knowledge and expertise. The next is a field engagement. So after people get involved for a while, we can get them involved in something where we actually deploy them out to a place like India or Honduras to get involved.
Well, if you'd like to find out anything more about Executives Without Borders, you can look at their website, which is on the bottom of your screen. And as always, thanks so much for watching us here on The District Dish. See who we're dishing with next time, follow us on Twitter at The District Dish, and be our fan on Facebook. See you next time.